I'm Nadia Veeran-Patel, and I'm one of the founders of Journeys to Inspire. And this is the third podcast that we're having. And I am joined by my two very good looking, esteemed colleagues, Zakiyya and Leigh. And we will be loving this interview that we're having with Leigh Thomas today. Zax?
So, hi, my name is Zakiyya Cassimjee, and one of the co-founders, and we've turned the tables around today and interviewing Leigh. So, Leigh, over to you.
Yeah, hi both. Looking forward to it. Scared a little bit, maybe. I'm Leigh Thomas. I'm one of the co-founders of Journeys to Inspire, which is part of the Alliances project, and the company I launched many moons ago. So yes, thanks guys. Fire away.
I'm still looking forward to this. Evil laugh. Leigh, before we go into the technicalities of Journeys to Inspire and what got us here, I want you to, because a lot of people know Leigh the gentleman, know Leigh the Welshman, but tell us, Leigh the person. Tell us about your upbringing. Tell us about your personal life, because I know there's a story there. And you and I have discussed this plenty of times, and I really want you to share that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so personal first because it's the most important, right? I right now a co-parent of an 8-year-old boy, a digital enthusiast, as we've established. I think the reality is the business is 7 years old in August, and Evan is 9 in September, right? So the younger years of Evan's life, which I know you two definitely resonate with, I was dictated to from multiple angles of when I had access to Evan, and work was one of them, which is one of the reasons why I launched the business. Right, I didn't want my work imposing on an opportunity to parent, which is a great opportunity to have that some don't. Right, but yeah, the upbringing I have is a humble one. Right, I think it's quite quickly to establish that I'm not very corporate and I don't have much of a corporate background. But I'm from quite an underprivileged area of the UK, the South Wales Valleys, as is known. My Valley accent goes up and down, depends who I'm speaking to. But yeah, it's not the most prolific in terms of careers, and economy's not exactly flourishing in the area I'm in, right? So I think that background has instilled a humble core to what I do and everything I do, because privileged or not, people can achieve, and that's something that's quite important to myself and my brother, who I'm very close with. My brother was the youngest head teacher in the UK. But yeah, I think we're both sort of examples of coming from not a lot and achieving quite a bit modestly as well. Like my achievements are sort of more based on fulfillment rather than monetary. I think I live a very good life, but I'm not exactly rolling around in 6-figure cars and living in 7-figure properties, right? But I do have a good life, and I do enjoy my life, and I do get a lot of fulfillment from my professional capacity, which is the alliances, right? I think what and why I launched this is just continued to give me so much fulfillment, because if I help one person a year or one person a day, it makes such a big difference to the industry. And I sometimes forget that I have that opportunity, because I am the biggest imposter in this industry. but yeah, I think the alliances, from broadening the community and strengthening the community and strengthening relationships with the community, is the key part of what we do. Whatever happens off the back of that is varies and is challenging. But yeah, I think we've done really well in sort of achieving that, and that's something that I'm really proud of, and it's something that I get a lot of fulfillment out of. Not so much money, but I do get a lot of fulfillment out of it.
On something that you said, because I think it's a lot of the time it's overlooked and understated, and that is men as parents. And it's so difficult when everybody kind of looks as a parental figure as just being the female, but there's a lot of times that the male suffers from that as well. And being a co-parent or a single parent, a lot of the time, where do we draw that line? Where do we say, that that parent is also allowed that time off, and that, because it's your primary role a lot of the time. And I feel like we do need to touch on that, and I'm sure you have plenty of feelings around that as well.
Yeah, I do. I think it is a privilege to have the opportunity. Like, I know people who try and try and try to conceive, and unfortunately they can't. So I'm of that mind of um, being privileged to be able to be a parent in the first place, right? And I think the other side of it is seeing the opportunity of being a parent and not shying away from it. I am, again, going back to where I'm coming from, right? Geographically, is there's men in the pub and men working, doing a lot of manual roles, and the mindset is the woman stays at home, right? Being a single parent, that can't happen because it's very different, right? So what I see as a primary role of my function is my fulfillment that I get from my professional career feeds back into my personal life. And being self-employed, there isn't a 9 till 5 schedule or rota system that I have in place. So it's literally juggling the same way as your traditional mum does. I do the school run when Evan's here, as often as I can, and it is pretty much every time. I go to parents' evenings. I go to digital workshops like this afternoon. I go to sports days. I go to all those things, which sometimes one parent will potentially not go to that because the other one is. But what I do see is the core part of that, even though I do get a lot from that, is the fact that Evan expects me to be there. And managing his expectations is more important than my fulfillment, and the fulfillment that I get from being part and being a hands-on parent is just being there for as much of it as I possibly can. Obviously, when I travel, I can't, and that's one of the sacrifices I make. But as he gets older, he can MC the chapters or something. I don't know. We'll get him a gig, somebody to get him involved to justify the flight. But yeah, it's interesting. I think the co-parenting dynamic, with all the challenges that comes with it, and anyone who co-parents knows whether it's an amicable situation or not. In my case, it varies. The feelings are the same, and I saw a TikTok this morning where what happens when the child goes to the mum's house is what it was. There was a bit of a sort of bias looking at the father's perspective on it all. And the dad was tidying up the toys and picking up the pajamas and putting the dirty laundry in the basket. And sometimes it's assumed that the other parent doesn't see what the other parent goes through when that handover happens. I know, as obviously as the children get older and they get a lot more independent and want to spend their time in other areas, outside of being at home with you, which I know will happen. The reality is now, as a co-parent, it's hard. It is hard, because one thing that I had to relay in the court procedure that I had to go through was that I'm already sacrificing 50% of the time, requesting 50% of the time, or 50% access. And that's unfortunately the outcome of what happens when you split, right? But I think there is benefits to it. I mean, there is free time for the other parent. and practically speaking, right? And I do think that the child gets a lot more attention because it's not diluted, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You think of the special occasions in my life, Christmas and birthdays and things like that. Things like that. Evan has two,
Yeah.
and I'm sure he's not,
Yeah.
shy of having those situations as well. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing, right? Challenge the norm
Hmm.
and change the narrative.
Exactly.
So well
Exactly.
said. Thanks. So let's go back. There was a conversation, and there's something that I've been meaning to ask you for a very long time, and that is, I remember you in our podcast. You stated that I came on, and I jumped onto this bandwagon of, there's just not enough females and not enough. But what a lot of people don't know is after that, it was evening time, and I remember I was sitting there and you phoned me. You gave me a call. And I want to know, what was your motives? What was your drive behind that? And what were you feeling to give me that call that day?
Yeah. Okay. It's a good question because up until that point, I've never created an awareness around any sort of diversity issue
Mm,
that exists, and it does exist, right? And purposefully, I've done that not to raise, in my mind, right, not to raise, um, not to raise the issue, but to ensure that no matter what we did as the alliances or the CISO alliances or CIO alliances or whatever, it didn't really matter your gender, your race, your age, your sexual orientation. It doesn't matter to me personally. Um, the qualification to be part of it is that you're impacting the industry, right? Or you're part of the industry or part of a business division impacting those STEM based vocations like a CIO or a CISO or an ISO or wherever the case may be. Um, what I saw from that band meeting from yourself, and I know that you were backed by Zach's as well in the message in there, which does help because you get that wider perspective as well. It's not just a singular person annoyed by the
mm,
situation, right? It's
mm,
a collective. Is that there's frustrations. There's huge frustrations with it, right? And there's a challenge now. One thing that I suppose I'm known for with the alliances is regardless of how good we are perceived in terms of our output, or whether it's our chapters or the evolution now into the platform that we're working on at the moment, is that we will start and we will take risks and we will do things and focus on areas that some will feel uncomfortable with or some won't be able to relate to,
mm,
but some will. So we'll go for it, right? And the reason I called you is that I saw a challenge, right? And I'm big on, not for my personal brand at all, but I'm big on leaving a legacy. I'm
mm,
big on making the most of the time that I have, because when it's gone, right? And
mm,
you either want to look back on it fondly or you want to look back on it and go, oh, I hid from that because I'm uncomfortable with it. And the main reason I called was to see if you're okay, because I know that you were really passionate about what you were talking about. I think we were sort of focusing more on where do females go and feel comfortable in terms of obtaining technical skills? Where are they getting those experiences, right? Where's the
mm,
exposure? What roles
mm,
is um, the stronger diversity side, the male? No, not men bashing, but what side is that doing? The existing role holders. What are you
yeah,
doing to impact this diversity gap, and where are you
mm,
empowering females to be part of the narrative, and changing that narrative?
mm,
And I think that that's something that I always want to impact, right? I think the human element and the relationships behind the alliances is the strongest part of it. I know everyone. When I message in the group, and even though there's 200 odd people in there now, and it is getting a little bit, diluted as such, or could be perceived that that's the case, I message in the individuals because every single person in our group I have at least met digitally or met physically and one or more time, and I've got to
mm,
know them. No, this isn't like invite someone to come and be part of an event. This is inviting someone to be part of a community where they can contribute and take from it continuously 24/7, right? And the challenge that you brought is something that I'd not focused on, and I do feel quite bad about that. And you've not made me feel bad. It's just, I just feel like it's something that I should have focused on differently to the way that I have done, in terms of possibly being perceived as ignoring it, which definitely isn't the case. It was purposeful, in that the same way as I don't use name badges on site, because I don't want to highlight what company people work for, because I don't really care. They're already qualified, right? Is the same way as I wouldn't not allow females, or have a strong female contingent being part of the community. But what you rose awareness to was the fact that, even in that band meeting itself, I think it was about 30 odd people on there. I don't know the demographics, but I do know that there was probably 2 women or 3 women. And I do, yeah, you two. And I do know that, in terms of female session leaders, even though everyone's invited, females don't traditionally come forward to speak at the chapters. And that imposter syndrome, which you guys have highlighted to me, it's something that I feel when I speak to a group of marketeers, because it is generally female led. I do feel like I'm sometimes sort of pigeonholed. Oh, here's another sales guy selling us an event space. It sort of rose the awareness to it, and I think, from our industry specifically, and which contributes to the STEM vocation base, right? There's an opportunity here where there is a platform for women to resonate with the imposter syndrome that they have, and find that commonality in not feeling comfortable all the time, and find that commonality of not knowing everything, and find that commonality in terms of being wrong amongst a group of peers, including women and also including men. That's one thing that I really want to come from this, is that, the brand is Journeys to Inspire Women Leaders in STEM, because we need more of those. We need more women leaders in this industry. But what I really want to come from it is, when I ask for session leaders for the chapters, and it's typically between 5 or 7. Unless we have a panel, there's more. The men who lead also come to me anxious, going, I don't know what you want from this. I know what's the format, what's this, and I'm able to change the way the format is by just allowing people to come and contextualize a problem that they don't know the answer to, and allow the community to unpack. And I want women and men and industry leaders to come forward with this and make sure that there's normality in not knowing everything in this industry. I mean, the media allows for us to be aware of that already, and it's already discomfort, because when your brand is being splashed all over the news for being part of a data breach or a ransomware attack or whatever, it hurts, because you're held accountable for that, right? And I just want to make sure that we've got that platform which has impact. And I think the key part of it is changing the narrative, right? And that is the grassroots that we're targeting. The traditional, and this isn't a criticism or trying to come across as a criticism to what's out there already. There's loads of women in tech, women in IT, women in security platforms out there. Other than bringing the group together, which is beneficial, what you doing to impact the next generation, and what you're doing to actually change the issue. I mean, we all want to sustain ourselves, right? But I'd love us not to have the women part of our job title and just leaders in STEM. Of our brand, and just leaders in STEM, because there's an equilibrium of who is part of it eventually, right? Whether that happens in my lifetime or not, right? I don't know, but I'd love to see it different, and I do think it is changing, and we've got an opportunity to be part of that change as well, and have a vehicle to impact it directly. It was a really long-winded question, as you said earlier. I do talk a lot.
Where have you seen the positive change in the narrative, if we're using those words?
Yeah, I have. I think we spoke about it just now. We spoke about a lady who's incredibly influential in terms of bridging that diversity gap in Jane Frankland, right? Who's someone who I was fortunate to meet about 9 years ago, maybe, off the top of my head, for the former company, where we did a panel on women in tech or women in security, I think it was at the time. It's a panel that I also part built with my colleagues at the time, and a real refreshing perspective on it all in terms of what people like Jane is doing at that time and where they are now. The content that they produce now and the affinity to that content resonates with the genders that we're aware of, right? I think it's happened over time, and I think, Zach, you mentioned on your podcast about the WeSys platform, I think that you went to, the event at Vodacom, which Carissa has played a huge role in developing, and the audience was full of women, right? And that is the aim, right? That is the whole aim. I think what those platforms have done really well, and what Jane has done really well, is created that community feeling, that peer-on-peer engagement amongst the female community in this industry. And I think you do have that peer-on-peer group to go to from the female community. I think it's there. I think it's sometimes hard to get into those things and have the confidence to go into those things as well, because there's self-doubt and there's the imposter syndrome and the rest of it, which we've already spoken about, right? And I think the evolution of that is where I jumped the gun potentially, is that eventually there won't be that feeling. There won't be that, as you guys have said in the chapters, right? You walk in and you notice how many women are in the room, and you notice how many women speakers are on the agenda, and you notice that sort of thing. Eventually I'd like it to flip reverse, which I think it needs to, where we have all women. And I did actually task myself with the February chapter that only women would lead sessions, but the community wouldn't come forward to do it, and even though I asked. I just think the narrative has changed somewhat, but at this level, and I think how people have got to this level now has been such a battle and such a fight and so unnecessary. And the opportunity that we have with Journeys to Inspire is, we are looking to go into schools, if we can get some schools to get back to us eventually. We are looking to get into schools and deliver this message to the young age. And I use an example. My son was selected as a digital leader in his class, and they were picking one girl and one boy per class. That was what the aim was, which was great, right? Equal. Nice, that's what you want. The applicants were male heavy or boy heavy, unfortunately, from the insight that I've received. And the girl that was picked alongside Evan has decided not to participate, even though they applied as an 8-year-old for a role in the school. I'm itching to get to the bottom as to why that is. I'm hoping it's not the experiences that you ladies have experienced in your careers, right? The ceilings that you've experienced, or the discomfort that this, I won't say her name because obviously she's a child, but this young lady's experienced in this process, which is linked to STEM vocations. All right, they're 8 years old. They're not going to jump into careers straight away. They've got quite a long path ahead of themselves. But my fear is at the grassroots level, there's still that subconscious challenge. And I think potentially, without overthinking it, where I'm from, the mindset of the area that I'm in, the valleys itself, the mining culture, which is similar to South Africa, possibly might be another reason why I resonate with SA, right? But the mining valleys and the coal mines and everything is still one or two still operational around here. That mindset is still potentially could be here, and the influences that are on these young people locally here may not give them the vision that we could. And as a third party, sometimes that's really refreshing as well, right? Not a parent or not an uncle or an auntie or a sibling or whatever the case may be. So I do think the narrative has changed. I'm really pleased. I feel like I'm doing a lot more towards it. We've got a long way to go. This is still early stages, right? But the main thing that I want from it all is that there's impact and outcomes and tangible, objective outcomes to what we're doing. And I hope that the platform enables that, across the efforts of all of us. And, it's not just me. It's great to be part of it, and I'm really grateful to be part of it. But I am only part of it. I'm not leading it. Right? This isn't about me. This isn't about the alliances. This is about the next gen. Right?
Mm.
Pathways to leadership. Right? What can we do to make sure that that's diverse?
Brilliant. I think it's great that we've started,
Mm.
and like you said,
Mm.
we've got a long way to go. But
Mm.
I think it's actually great to have started this journey. And
Yeah,
again, if we change one person's view or one person's life, then we've made a difference, right?
absolutely.
So great.
And I think the and I just want to bring it back to the fact that we're trying to the equity. We're saying women leaders, and it started that way, but it's also steamrolled into there's a lot more diversity out there that's not included, and that's where that inclusion comes in, and that's where you kind of standing out as well, Leigh, is let's not exclude anybody. There's no one that's excluded from this. Everybody's had a journey, everybody's had something that has affected their pathway, and what has that journey cost them, what has that journey brought them, and what could we change for the future generation. So I want to thank you for that share, Leigh. It's been, yeah, really interesting to get your background as well. I know there's a lot of personal touches that a lot of people don't know, but if you could leave us some parting words, as what's the legacy you want for Evan to see that you've left for him?
Yeah, I think we've all. I don't know if I'm going to get too close to home here, right? But I think we've all experienced being excluded along the way, right? And I just want to make sure that without trying to promote this utopian happy clappy cult concept, that won't be in the bloopers. We'll keep that in. That inclusive mindsets create unity, which creates progression. Okay, I think my there's people that have been instrumental, and you guys are. I hope you guys are part of my journey and my especially this change now in terms of launching the business, rat race, making sure that we're not sinking. This platform mindset and platform change will enable us to be a lot better and a lot more effective. But I think the influences I've had on the alliances and the influences I've had in my career are those that have been inclusive. And I think it's an important mindset that just because someone is a different race, a different gender, a different sexual orientation, a different age, and I'll hit one here, a different seniority to you in the industry, it doesn't mean that their opinion is less. And I think what instilled even more confidence, and this is another part of Journeys to Inspire, which is pathways to, that's what gets lost, is you're not going to be here forever, right? And you can either come and take in your legacy and in your duration, and there's nothing wrong in that at all. I'm not casting judgment here, but there is an opportunity to leave a legacy and do more. And that's why I hope that when Evan has the option of going to have a really successful career elsewhere or have loads of hardship and hurt in the community, it's up to him or other options, I'm sure, that he sees the alliances as an inclusive environment which people make the most of, without any bias or selfish gain or anything like that. So yeah,
Love it.
closing
Love it. Thank you
remarks.
so much. Thanks, Leigh.
Nice one,
Zach,
guys.
thanks
Thanks.
so much for co-hosting with me as well. It's been a pleasure. There's been some great funny moments that we can hopefully
Always,
share as well.
always,
I,
yeah, always
yeah,
a
I didn't.
fun. And I think, Leigh, I think you've been quite inspiring in this interview. And I hope
Mm,
our listeners would find it as well. So, yeah,
yeah.
it's Good
and
to
in
know.
our journey,
Mm,
as well.
absolutely, in our journey. So
Yeah,
thank you.
you've, I think
Nice one,
you've
guys.
underestimated and undersold yourself in in believing in us as well, and we want to
Very
thank you
much
for that.
so.
So
Hmm.
yeah, you've been amazing, and thank you for lifting this up. Thank you for steamrolling it and getting us here. And yeah, we look forward to the journey to come. Thanks.